Chapter 33. The Final Push. Andrew continued to pace the length of the plane. He'd been forced into his seat during their takeoff, restrained behind a belt to keep him from moving. But still he had pulled out a bottle of water from his bag, spinning a stream between his fingers to distract his thoughts. Kent could not blame him. He felt himself responsible. He'd sprinted after the black van as soon as he had registered what was happening, but even his speed was no match for a service van peeling out onto the highway. Andrew had attempted to pull the water out of the radiator, a maneuver he admitted never worked at any point during their training, but it was the only thing he could do. Both boys were powerless to stop them taking her, and though he hardly knew Andrew, Kent knew he was beating himself up over the fact that he had brought them here in the first place. They'd almost been arrested for a public disturbance. Kent tried to communicate what had happened with an approaching security guard, though Andrew had taken a less graceful approach, shoving one of the men to the point that he brandished a taser in response. Only the quick intervening of a bystander calmed the situation, flashing his own badge and talking down the guards before revealing himself to the boys as Ali, the man who was assigned to escort them to Hadiyat. Andrew had cursed him out for not arriving 5 minutes earlier. When Ali pulled out his phone to contact the city, Andrew flashed his ID and issued a code green. Ali pointed them in the right direction, and Andrew stormed off, fuming, leaving Kent to speak with Ali and explain everything that had happened, working backwards to the information that had already been passed. Their mission was now completely changed. The men who had taken Emma were obviously not locals, and trusting his instincts, Kent feared he knew exactly where she was being taken. Or more accurately, to whom. At least that's a plan, he thought, communicating as much to Ali, who attempted to lift their spirits ahead of what both boys saw as backtracking. They were already in Dubai. How could they be expected to leave when they knew exactly where Emma was? The reality of leaving her behind, if even for a day, sank in as the trio approached the plane. Andrew slung another flurry of expletives Ali's way, but his ability to pivot the mission only went so far. Ali was adamant their best chance of getting her back safely was to start in Hadiyat. Andrew had thrown his backpack on the ground at those words, his water bottle exploding into a mess of wet plastic. Only then did Kent find out that Andrew's hesitation was based in fear, not frustration. They'd come this far without Bilgeran's permission, and as soon as they stepped foot in the hub city, it was inevitable that he would pull them back to the States with or without Emma. By force, if necessary. Kent had fallen silent at the news, watching Andrew pull the dirtied water off the ground and back into the bottle as they were herded like prisoners into the jet. 2 hours later, Kent felt the wheel hatch pop open below his feet. Under different circumstances, the city would have left him breathless. The approach from above made its symmetry even more impressive. Set in the middle of nowhere like all the other hub cities, Hadiyat was alone in the desert expanse, a series of perfect circles expanding outward from a central lake, each one progressively newer than the last. Even their specialized buildings, their embassy, school, and residential and training centers which surrounded this lake, were designed to look identical from the outside, all with the feel of a classical Islamic paradise. Ali submitted to Andrew's demand of taking them directly to the training center, jumping beyond any ceremonial welcoming or chance to settle in, so long as the boys agreed to change clothes before entering the building. Kent noticed immediately the abundance of white robes on every man matching the ones Ali wore, accented in the varying pan-Arab colors of black, red, and green. Every woman was covered head to toe in black, most of whom had their faces veiled too. It had been a long time since Kent had worn anything but shorts or jeans beyond their mission outfits, but he found the loose clothing a comfort, especially when they stepped into the heat. He had only a moment to look around at the heart of the city before Andrew yelled his name and pulled him into the training center. The inside of the building was so shockingly different from the outside, Kent found himself frozen in place again prior to Andrew this time using a water whip as persuasive tool. His first time in the training center back in Tylersville, he found himself in a world anachronistically different from his own, far more advanced in technology than he could have imagined. Hadiyat took that technology to the next level, as if this branch had jumped 5 or even 10 years into the future beyond the United States. Their training floor looked similar to the one he was used to, or even those he had seen in China or South America. But to his continued surprise, the cubes that made up the sessions moved independent of their source, able to move with their own purpose and fly through the air to more quickly shift the scene, rather than contort form like a giant Rubik's Cube as they did elsewhere. Kent saw birds floating through the air in addition to airborne assault vehicles and transport, free of any cabling from the rafters of the room. What looked like a dragonfly sped along the edge of the floor before cutting in toward the nearest training group. Kent recognized it as a mobile camera drone. Andrew continued to tug him and Ali along the edge of the square floor as the latter directed them to a corner room. Inside, a dozen men were scattered about the room, staring at varying sizes of transparent computer screens, each one monitoring a different graph, map, or camera feed. The door shut behind them with a muffled exhale of air, soundproofing them inside. "Who are they?" he asked over the screens, directing the question to a man analyzing the security footage from the airport. The man clearly spoke no English, as another had to nudge his attention toward Andrew and then translate the question and answer. "We don't know," the translator returned. "Then what are you here for?" Andrew raged, letting the question hang in the air while everyone stopped their tasks and stared. Andrew pulled out a yellow notepad from his backpack. "Amin," he raised, and after a moment's pause, a large man in a red keffiyeh raised his hand. Kent realized he was taking attendance. "Laden," he continued, going through a list of 10 people before only 2 remained unnamed. "You two," he ordered, speaking through the translator. "Out, now." One man turned to the translator to argue, but Andrew repeated with force. The 2 men rose from their seats and reluctantly walked out of the room, the door sealing itself shut behind them. "I'm issuing the green," Andrew informed those remaining, pausing to let the translator intervene. "Anything that happens in this room is forbidden repeating to anyone outside that door, including people at your own embassy." He flashed his ID the same way he had done to Ali. "My name is Andrew Guerin. 2-star, he introduced. "All of you are here because you can apparently be trusted to keep whatever is in this room confidential. Don't make me regret that decision." The man controlling the cameras fast-forwarded through the footage, getting as clean a shot as he could at the 2 men hauling Emma out the front doors. "We came here following the trail of Milo Chervinsky," he continued. "Our leads in Guyana pointed to various addresses throughout the United Arab Emirates, all of which you have already discovered to be in some ownership or linked to the former Polish government." He pointed to the room's main screen, which now showed the blown-up image of the 2 men. Andrew zeroed in on their faces. "Your embassy already knows this," he asserted. "What they don't know is that 2 hours ago my sister was kidnapped by 2 white men as soon as we landed in Dubai. If they find out, they'll alert the embassy back in the United States and pull us back to Tylersville immediately, by which point they may have already done serious damage to my sister, and the most wanted man in the world might slip out of our grasp." He spun around to focus his attention on each of the men in turn. "Now, we have no evidence that these men are Polish. Everything we do is based on limited time and resources, and a hunch that our original mission plan and the links Kent and I found in South America are connected. That hunch also leads me to believe that the American embassy is compromised by a spy feeding information to Chervinsky, which is why I've issued the green. Is that understood?" A mumbling of assents in both English and Arabic permeated around the room. "Now tell me one of you's found something." The translator echoed the sentence, and a man raised his hand in the far corner. The other man translated. "Traffic cameras followed the license plate from the airport, all the way to a new high-rise in the south of the city." Andrew nodded. "What else do we know?" "Sky Kingdom Tower," another man picked up with significantly better English. "Began construction a few years ago as a private enterprise between Polish and Qatari investors. The holding company was liquidated after Chervinsky's takeover, and all assets transferred to the government. Legally, it still belongs to the new regime, though I doubt they've taken notice of foreign assets given the power vacuum back home." Andrew cracked his wrist. "I'm waiting for the but." The man pulled up a view of the unfinished skyscraper. "But, even though construction is at a standstill and the property is currently abandoned, neighbors have reported multiple times to police an increase in activity. People coming and going from the underground garage, lights on during the night, even construction noises. Let me guess, these have increased since Chervinsky was ousted?" "They only started after Chervinsky was ousted," the man clarified. "Meaning he's making himself at home," Andrew grumbled. "Well, why haven't the cops done anything?" "Because nobody cares about an empty building," Kent found himself speaking. "Trust me." Andrew looked at him surprised, only to turn back to the others and nod. "All right, I need as many schematics of the places you can get me," he said with increased urgency. "Ductwork, water lines, whatever's finished, unfinished, speculated, I don't care. I'm going in tomorrow if I have to." "With what army?" Kent almost cautioned. But his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door unsealing itself. Every screen in the room went black. 2 individuals entered the room, both significantly shorter than Kent. Dressed head to toe in black except around her face, the taller of the pair was a girl, with skin paler than Margot's broken out in a hive of acne and facial scars. The hijab hugged her face so tightly it made her broken features pop, and Kent found himself avoiding her gaze to stare at her partner. Had he never seen him in pictures, he never could have imagined this was Emma's second brother. His dark curly hair flowed out beneath his white keffiyeh, ringing his coppery face, which, unlike the girl, was without blemish. Most striking of all were his eyes, small and slanted and brown in contrast to Emma's giant blue-gray ones, which were shared with both Andrew and their father. Aside from his height, nothing but the glare of disaffection toward his brother gave any indication of who Riley Guerin was. Andrew returned the stare, apparently biting his bottom lip to stop himself from saying something regrettable. The room remained silent and blank, waiting for either of the brothers to break. Even after the door resealed itself, a minute of unbroken contempt passed between the pair in unspoken conversation. Finally, it was Riley who broke away, looking to the translator and saying in a surprisingly light voice, "At ease. Resume the green." Without confirmation from Andrew that his brother was privy to the news, the men resumed bustling about, the monitors returning to full color. Riley gave his attention back to Andrew. "Hablamos después," Andrew grunted, and Riley turned his attention to Kent, letting Andrew go to wander between the others. "You must be Kent," Riley introduced, his face finally breaking into a smile. Whatever hostility existed with Andrew nearby had completely disappeared, as though a new person were standing before him. "Nice to finally meet you." "I hope that's a good thing," Kent returned, finding his handshake with one far stubbier than his own. "Under different circumstances, it probably would be," Riley shrugged. "Thanks for helping me find my sister." Before Kent could think of a response, Riley waltzed over to one of the men along the sidewall, and the girl stepped forward and offered her own hand. "Siobhan," she introduced in a thick accent. Again, Kent found himself averting his eyes from her face. "Pleasure." His eyes instead found her hand protruding from her gown, and he cautiously waited for her to pull it away. "Am I allowed to?" he wondered, noticing that she was very obviously the only girl in the room. She rolled her enormous brown eyes. "It's not a crime to shake my hand," she complained. "I'm Irish. I can handle a load worse than that." He hesitantly returned the gesture, only to have his attention pulled back to Andrew. "Kent, come here," the now familiar voice called. He was standing over a tabletop screen displaying an intricate series of blueprints. "How fast can you take stairs?" Andrew asked. "What?" he stuttered. "Why?" "Because I'm trying to figure out our best course of action." "Well, who's all going?" he wondered aloud. 2045, the man called Lawton interrupted, leaning over the table. "You want a tower heist, they've done 3. Kent raised an eyebrow in Lawton's direction. "Can we trust them?" Before he could answer, Andrew inserted, "You leave secrecy to me. Answer my question." Kent shrugged. Same as usual," he said. "Twice as fast as you, probably." "Good," Andrew nodded, his attention still on the blueprints. "Without someone like Jordan, we're limited with how much we can see on the inside." "What about an elementalist?" Lawton added. "Some of the Earth elementalists can read floors, can't they?" "Well, you find a groundhog who'd be ready to go in 24 hours, would you?" Andrew barked aggressively, silencing Lawton again. He turned to his brother, who was making a list of light patterns in the tower windows from nearby security cameras. "Riley, what time is it back home?" Without looking up, Riley called out, 2:25. "Good," Andrew relaxed. "That gives us at least 4 hours until Dad's up. There's no way he can know about Emma yet." "But Jordan and Xander are back," Kent reminded him cautiously. "I'm sure he knows we're here," Andrew agreed. "And I'm sure he's pissed about it, but he's not going to force us back unless he knows about her. He's not going to pull the dad card in front of the embassy if he can help it." "Well, why would Emma change anything?" Kent asked. "He knows he'd do anything to get her back, doesn't he?" "Of course he does," Andrew huffed, casting a dark gaze at his brother again. "That's exactly why he's going to pull us away from this." Seeing the confused look on Kent's face, he added, "He won't let us become the Granhooks." They remained locked in the room for 3 hours, at which point the hunger in Kent's stomach became unbearable. Nervously voicing the thought to Andrew, he was pulled from his reverie only to reply, "Good. I was waiting for you to say something." He turned to the door, stopping halfway to address the room. "I'll be back in an hour," he announced. "You can leave when we have 3 solid plans at getting her out safe and sound. Don't disappoint me." He unsealed the door to another bout of silence, stepping through and holding the door for Kent. Andrew shot a glance at Riley, looking steady to say something, only to turn back to Kent and conclude, "Come on." Alone, they made their way to the main floor of the training center, then followed the curve around the lake to the city's northern shopping plaza. Desiring something near enough to home, Andrew settled for a shawarma stand, paying for Kent's as well. The boys found a nearby table and sat. The taste took Kent back to New York. Taken from his nostalgia by the cry of a baby down the road, It was only then that he noticed Andrew's hands fumbling with the wrap, his place covered in the falling contents from within. They were shaking so furiously he could hardly get the bite to his mouth. Seeing Kent notice, Andrew put the food back on the plate. "I'm fine," he huffed. "No, you're not," Kent wanted to say, but saw the frenzy in his eyes, unwilling to back down. He set down his own wrap, turning his eyes to the stalls around them. "My mom used to shake like that," he recalled. "Still does, probably, when she's off it." Andrew opened his mouth to speak, but suddenly stopped shaking altogether, as if a switch had been flipped from inside his nervous system. His eyes caught something behind Kent, and he swore under his breath. 3 men were approaching them, all wearing pristine white outfits. The 2 on the outside were obviously bodyguards, but the demeanor of the man in the middle made him far more menacing than the others. "Assalamu alaikum," he addressed in a deep, steady voice. He gave Kent the scantest of glances before turning his blocky face to Andrew, who replied in turn. "Wa alaikum salam." Kent half expected the guards to triangulate around them, but they remained in their standoff beside the main official. "You boys are a long way from home," he continued. "You know why we're here," Andrew lied, keeping his face stern. "I was told 3 of you'd be coming," the man added. "Your sister, is she sleeping?" Andrew went on, sternly tapping Kent's leg with his foot under the table to stop him from reacting. "Our clocks are off." The man nodded, turning his golden brown eyes on Kent again before bearing down on Andrew. "Sleeping," he repeated. "And you 2 are just out for a stroll?" "We were hungry," Kent added, still unsure of Andrew's angle but doing his best to play his role correctly. "We'll do the same when we're finished." The man swiveled to Kent again, tipping his head to flex his enormous chin. "And is that before or after you finish your business in the training center?" Kent felt himself whiten. Andrew ground his teeth into his bottom lip again. "How?" Kent breathed. He's the Prime Minister," Andrew interrupted quickly. The man looked to Kent and held out a limp hand. "Abdulaziz Al-Tarak," he introduced. "Welcome to Hadiatullah." Andrew gave no hint of reply, and Kent understood his hesitation. "Bold of you to assume your father is the only one who sees everything within his borders," Tarak continued. "Your little green party's been disbanded." Andrew stood to his feet, matching the Prime Minister's height. "I have every right not if the embassy orders you down," Tarak stated. "Which is exactly what I'm doing. Whatever your obsession is with the former president of Poland, it ends here. We're monitoring the situation as closely as we can, and we do not need your little vigilante plan interrupting the work already being done." He turned to the guard on his left. "Now I take that you boys aren't big on following suggestions, so Isa here is going to stick with you until you finish your meals and escort you back to your quarters. I encourage you both to stay put until morning. If you so much as step foot in my training center again, I'll have you tried for trespassing. Is that clear?" Ken kept his eyes on the Prime Minister as they both assented. "Yes, sir." "Good," Tar concluded. "Sleep tight. The 3 of you are flying out at sunrise." It lasted a fraction of a second, not long enough for the 3 men to notice, but Kent caught Andrew's eyes just enough to understand that they had both understood what he had implied. He doesn't know. As Tarek and the other guard disappeared out the way they had entered, Kent followed Andrew's lead and kept his mouth clamped shut while he finished his shawarma in anxious silence. Andrew's hands were perfectly still. Back in the heart of the city, Issa escorted them silently to the far side of the lake, where they entered the exact same facade as the training center, only to find themselves in a massive hotel, the city's residential center, which was partitioned into split common rooms to segregate each squad's male and female members. The silence which had followed them since the market was broken by Andrew, who had handed the guard his nearly empty bottle of Coke from the shawarma stand and asked him to dispose of it for him. Somewhat surprised by the question, Issa shrugged and took it before the boys entered the room, where Kent spotted a trash bin literally feet to the right of the door. Opening his mouth to speak, Andrew held up a finger to stop him. "Wait," he mouthed, and the 2 boys stared in silence for 20 seconds before Andrew straightened. "All right, he's out of earshot." "They don't know about Emma," Kent blurted, unable to stop himself. "I know," Andrew acknowledged. "How could they not know about Emma?" "I don't know," he puzzled, pacing back and forth. "As soon as he's out of the building, I'm going to find Riley. I need to talk to him." "You heard Tarek," Kent warned. "They'll arrest you for that." "Oh, I'm not going to the training center." "What?" he questioned. "Then where?" "It doesn't matter where," Andrew stated. "You don't need to know." Kent felt as though Andrew had slapped him in the face. I'm a part of this now too, he defended. You can't just leave me here and wait for you to come back with answers. Why not? Andrew said, turning his back on Kent and placing his hand against the door. So many replies bounced through Kent's head, they jumbled together in a confused mess of concentration. What he ended up saying was, You hate your brother. Andrew spun on his heels with a burning fury, only to hold his tongue and stare at Kent until his face had drained of its red complexion. You're right, he agreed. And I haven't talked to him in 2 years, which is exactly why I don't want you there. And what am I supposed to do? Andrew laughed. Sleep. He pointed to a large clock on the wall made of several disconnected metal pieces. It's like 4 a.m. back home. I'm not tired, Kent grunted, sounding more like a pouting toddler than he intended. Well, then find something else to do, Andrew huffed. Call Jordan. See how things are going back home. I don't care. Before Kent could reply, Andrew opened the door and ran off down the hall in the direction of a back exit. Frustrated, Kent kicked his bag on the floor, which had been brought to the room during their time at the training center. He slung it haphazardly over his shoulder and picked the door on the right, finding himself in a plain room much like the ones in the safe house back in China. The shaded windows revealed nothing beyond but a narrow street, across from which stood the outside of another characterless building. Alone in the room, he was suddenly overcome with a paranoid sense of claustrophobia, unaided by the fact that the common room was far smaller than any of the others he'd been in. Not even a full kitchen was awarded them. A single 2-cushion couch surrounded the room's television, smaller than the one he was used to back in Tylersville. He had been honest with Andrew, but 15 minutes later, after his anxiety had calmed to a manageable level, Kent finally felt the consequences of being awake for nearly a full day. He was hesitant to take one of the company's sleeping medications, eager to hear from Andrew when he ultimately returned, knowing he would have some kind of plan. All the effort they had put into things that morning could not have simply been shut down by a threat from the Middle Eastern embassy, could they? The question stopped him from sleeping, even as his body begged him. Lying in bed, even with the curtains darkening the room, he flipped the question and replaced Tarek with Bill Guerin, and realized how completely out of their depth they were against that kind of power. He stewed on their options for over an hour, unable to close his eyes, before eventually giving in to the medication idea and hoping Andrew would wake him with any news. The clock on his bedside table read 1:57 when he finally came to life, knowing immediately his hope in Andrew had failed. Kent stormed out of his bedroom and knocked on both of the other doors, hearing no response. His irritation was interrupted by the loudest growl he'd ever heard from his stomach, and he scoured the kitchen fridge to find some way of satiating it. Halfway through a bowl of cereal, he questioned what to do with the rest of his early morning, starting with the highlights from the previous weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix, before eventually giving in to Andrew's prompt to contact Jordan, hoping the call to the other side of the planet would somehow be subsidized by the company. The tone rang longer than usual before Jordan picked up the other end. Kent? Hey, he breathed, relieved to hear his friend's voice at least one more time. What time is it there? Kent glanced at the wall. Almost 5, he admitted nonchalant. Jordan swore on the other end. How's Margot? Jordan hesitated. Kent could tell something was wrong. I don't know, I think we just broke up. Kent rose to attention on the couch. What? He sounded. Actually? Maybe, Jordan hardly clarified. The Garens basically have her on a leash. I just got done talking to her for the first time, but we didn't really have that much time together. I don't know, it didn't end very well. Jeez, Kent sighed, heartbroken. I'm sorry, man. Don't be, Jordan calmed. But Kent could see through his brave face, even over the phone. This is honestly for the best. I could be gone any day. They still haven't told you anything? Nothing, Jordan sighed. I asked Margot if she could get clues from Bill, but I doubt it's going to happen. If she can start to move on before they take me, it might be easier. Again, Kent tried to maneuver through dozens of comforting responses, only to trip over. Damn. Anyway, Jordan moved. What's up with you guys? Did you find anything yet? Kent took a deep breath, knowing that if Andrew was asleep, he had given up hope on finding a way out. Both embassies would know by morning. There was no use hiding it from Jordan, even if it meant saving him the worry. Emma's missing. A long pause followed, before Jordan finally replied. What? She was kidnapped right in front of us at the airport, he reported. We think they were working for Chervinsky. What? Jordan repeated, sterner this time. Garen doesn't know yet, Kent admitted. Andrew issued the green as soon as we were picked up in Dubai, and we started working on a plan with Riley before the PM here shut us down. Somehow he doesn't know either, but they're flying us back in the morning. When we show up without Emma, shit's gonna hit the fan. Another long pause preceded a volley of swearing from Jordan's side of the phone. But don't worry about Johnny, Kent relieved, feeling more relaxed after letting the truth loose on someone other than Andrew. The embassy here said they have eyes on Chervinsky. If he's connected, they're gonna find him. Who the hell cares about Johnny? Jordan interrupted. Chervinsky has Emma and you're worried about finding Johnny? Kent was taken aback, this time unable to even conjure one response. Kent, please tell me you guys know where she is, Jordan continued. What? He stumbled out of his shock. Yeah, they have eyes on her. That's what we were doing with Riley. But if you guys are leaving, don't worry, Kent breathed heavily. We'll tell them where she is. How long's she been gone? Kent glanced back at the clock. This morning? Your time? Jordan shouted. Kent, do you have any idea how long that is? They could have killed her by now. If you've kept on to the hope that Johnny's still alive by now, then you can have hope that Emma is too, Kent scolded, finally swinging with an upper hand. She'll be fine, Jordan. You and I both know she'll be fine. She's a skip in the hands of the most wanted fugitive on the planet, Jordan reminded. Yeah? And the world's most powerful warlord isn't going to rest until his daughter comes home without a scratch, Kent defended. Why do you think Andrew and I are leaving without her? For once, Jordan had no response. Things are going to be all right, Kent continued, saying it as much to himself as his friend. When he realized the irony of saying that to Jordan, he shifted the conversation back to the States. Even for you. Wherever you end up, it's going to be fine. He could hear Jordan take a deep breath on the other end. I know. Do you? I have to, Jordan admitted. I have to trust what's on the other side, otherwise there's no point to anything anymore. Ken felt his jaw clench. You know I'm going to find you, right? He said. After all this is over, Emma, Johnny, Chervinsky, as soon as I'm done with this company, I'm going to find you. Ken, you don't... The door from the hallway burst open, and Andrew stormed into the room, a frenzied look on his face. It suddenly occurred to Kent that Andrew had not been sleeping, nor had he slept at all in over 30 hours. He walked over to Kent and pulled the phone from his hand, bending it backwards and snapping it in two. Dude! I'll buy you a new one, he huffed. Grab your bag, we're leaving. That's my phone! And now they can't track you, Andrew strong-armed. Give me your arm. He held out a pocket knife, showing a bandage around his own elbow. Dude, Kent breathed, suddenly nervous for his own life. Either you do it or I do it! Andrew's eyes were so bloodshot they had turned yellow. They're not allowed to track us. He tried to defuse the situation, fumbling over the answer he was looking for. The citizen's privacy thing. Yeah, that's what they want you to think, Andrew grunted. As long as you have one, they have access to it, regardless of whether or not they're allowed to. Kent swallowed, feeling a chill run up his spine. Fine, he allowed. Give me the knife. He looked at the purple bags under Andrew's eyes before turning to his own elbow, where he noted the tracker still embedded in the skin from their time in South America. As crazy as he looked, Andrew had given Kent no reason not to trust him thus far. He gritted his teeth, anticipating pain far less than the two broken legs, and carved it out onto the common room floor. Now grab your stuff, Andrew hurried, jumping right back to his urgency. Where are we going? Dubai, he announced. They're not sending us home without my sister. Kent rushed into the bedroom and gathered his supplies before hurrying behind Andrew out the door of the common room. What'd you learn? He raised through a hushed voice, cautious of the ears that might not be listening. What else did they find? Nothing concrete, Andrew stated. We're taking what we had before lunch and running with it. But the Prime Minister, Tarek doesn't know his ass from his mouth, Andrew cemented, turning them down a rear stairwell. He doesn't know Emma isn't here. But how? Kent railed, his voice echoing off the concrete. How can he not know that? He said he knew everything that went on within the city. He was bluffing, Andrew exclaimed. He's posing. Maybe to try to match the power my dad has. I don't know. One of Riley's informants must have tricked a feed or something. Either way, he doesn't know, and we have to take advantage of that. What? Kent breathed, feeling Andrew's mania wash over him. What do you mean, take advantage of it? We're going to get Emma back, he replied without hesitation. You and me. What the hell are you talking about? Kent hesitated. What about the others? There are no others, Andrew confirmed, pushing out to the back alley. It's just you and me. What? For the first time, Andrew stopped and turned to stand up to Kent, who stared down at him, shivering. Are you in this with me or not? Before he could answer, the lights of a passing vehicle reflected off a separate car parked directly in front of the door. A black sports car stood with every door open, alone in the alley. Oh my... He froze, staring at the car. That's a 458. Andrew turned to notice it too. You like Ferraris, right? He recalled. That's what you told me on the plane. It didn't take me long to find one. Kent shot his attention from the car to Andrew. What? Here, Andrew coaxed, handing him a red key. You're driving. What do you mean I'm... Kent stared between the key and the car, his heart thumping louder and louder into his ears. I can't drive, Andrew sighed. You're telling me I walk in on you literally watching racing and you don't know how to drive? I'm 15. Do you know how cars work? Kent was almost offended by the question. Of course I know how cars work. Do you know what a transmission is? Of course. Do you know what a gear shift is? Yes, then learn to drive this damn Ferrari and pass your test this summer, Andrew boldened. Get in the car! Kent felt his mouth drop as he again stared between Andrew and the car. Dude! Andrew shoved a finger hard into Kent's chest. I'm giving you the opportunity to joyride your dream car through the desert for half a day of your life, and all I'm asking you to do is save my sister with me. He shrugged. I honestly don't think there's anything you'd rather do. Kent took another glance at the vehicle. Or you can stay here and wait to explain to Tarek where the Garin kids went under your watch, Andrew argued sarcastically. I'm sure they'll be nothing but kind about it. Every cautious nerve in his body was screaming no, but Kent knew he was right. He was too far into this thing to step away without backup. Nothing in this mission had told him otherwise. Beside Andrew Garin was the safest place Kent could be. He begrudgingly took the key and shoved it into the ignition, while Andrew tossed the bags into the frunk. As soon as it sparked, Kent felt his breath freeze. It only took him 2 blocks to know exactly what he was doing, as though he'd been doing this his entire life. They sped to the northern gate of the city, Kent only realizing then that the bar was down. Before he could even ask, Andrew turned with a malicious grin on his face. Slow down. I got it. Opening his window, he tossed his water bottle in the direction of the security gate, where the hesitant guard was suddenly thrown from his position into the control desk. The bar rose to the sky, letting them fly through to the road beyond.